Yeah, that was my psycho classmate trying to stab me. Let me tell you about how that happened. So recently, I've been binge watching prison stories from Larry Lawton, the Jewel Thief. Pretty good channel, by the way, you should go ahead check it out. And the craziest thing about it was that it reminded me of grade school. So now you're thinking, what? How could the two possibly be similar? I mean, one place is for adults who have done some pretty bad stuff, and another place is for some kids who are about to do some pretty bad stuff. That's bad, by the way. There were actually a lot more parallels than you'd think. For starters, my grade school was pretty strict. We had uniforms and other strict rules. You couldn't bring cell phones, DSs, card games, or other fun stuff like that. And maybe we didn't get strip searched, but it came pretty close when you had bald, muscular men with walkie-talkies come into the classroom, search everyone's bags and lockers, and then have us stand in a T-pose while they frisked us with sticks. Any violation meant you'd get sent to detention, where you'd sit alone in an empty classroom and write an essay about what you learned by screwing up. So that was the lawful side of the equation. Now in prison there are gangs which you don't mess with, and I saw gangs in grade school too. Except since everyone was Chinese, it wasn't race-based but it was more hobby-based. On top of the ladder were the basketball gang, then the football gang, the swimming gang, and the Pokemon gang. These guys would always stick with each other, and they were pretty exclusive. They had the most rigorous standards. You'd lose your dignity if you mistook Charizard for Blaziken, which I totally did not do. So there were these weird hierarchies, and the boss would be someone who managed to slip some contraband in, like a cell phone or a little Pokemon figurine. And people took this hierarchy seriously. I mean, there were a bunch of people who just followed the boss around doing whatever he said and hating whoever he hated for no real reason. And the craziest thing was that even the teachers respected it. There was this one time when I insulted one of these gangster godfathers about his glasses because he made fun of my shoes. And guess what? The teacher sent me out. She told me to drag my desk outside just to shut the class up. So those were the teachers. They were kind of like the guards. There are a bunch of good people among that bunch, but mostly when something goes wrong, they just send everyone to detention. Even self-defense meant you got in trouble because fighting back is still fighting. So you just had to hope no one bothered you. It was bad if you were at the bottom of the hierarchy. You were an outcast. There was once this kid that everyone hated so much that we dubbed the plague after him and we called it Alex Germs. You wouldn't lend him anything or go near him because if he touched you, he'd contaminate you with his Alex Germs until you passed it to someone else. Kinda like the cheese touch from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I was the nice kid who befriended him. Guess where that got me? So now I was public enemy number 1. And that cheap punk Alex didn't even want to take his germs back. And at this time, the teachers were messing around with the seat plan, and I ended up right in the middle of the basketball gang that hated me. I tried to befriend them, do them a few favors, and hopefully they'd help me cover up the fact that I still had the Alex germs with me. Like in prison, you lent stuff to people, and when you did, you returned it quick, or violence would break out, no matter how small it was. I mean, we once fought and ended up in the principal's office over half an eraser, and that's only half as bad as the time we ended up there over a penny. We valued our possessions that much, and this guy, the boss, let's call him Evan, would extort me of my lunch money, pencils, and those cute little sharpeners that looked like frogs. I gave in cause, you know, I needed to get in good with this gang so everyone else would stop bullying me. This guy was a sociopath. For a while, I thought I was getting on Evan's good side. He'd start calling me friend, and he'd ask if he could come visit my house. My sacred space. We hung out and had some fun, but then the next day he was trash-talking everything in it, talking about how poor I was and he'd spread nasty rumors about my family. Now, that kind of stuff I wasn't gonna let slide. Our verbal sparring devolved into fistfights, violence, that kind of bad stuff. You'd think the teachers would do something about it, but instead, my homeroom teacher just said he hated us both and seated Evan and me alone in a corner so we would fight and he'd get to send us to detention even more. And that kinda worked, I guess. I mean, I'd come home with injuries a lot more often because of what that guy did. Terrible teacher. Now even in prison, there are truly insane people that everyone else is afraid of. Our grade school had one too. Let's call him Raymond. Raymond was not the quiet maniac type. He was actually pretty outgoing, he liked to joke a lot, but this guy had violent tendencies. When he got into a fight, he would get very aggressive, and he got into fights a lot. This guy was getting into trouble pretty much every day. Now, this guy wasn't really part of any of the gangs, but he wanted to get in good with Evan too. So what he'd do was that he would draw these ugly cartoons and say it was me or my mom, make fun of me. It was pretty dumb, but it got me mad. And at the time, his drawings were still a lot better than mine, like I talk about it here in this video. So I decided to tell on him. Uh-oh! See, in prison, snitches get into really big trouble. And I guess in grade school, snitches got stitches too. Literally in this case. I told him I'd tell on him, and I just headed for the door. Now in prison, your life is at risk, because the last thing you want is to get shanked. And I didn't think I need to be that on guard in school, but I was wrong. There was a gleam of light, and I saw that Raymond took a pair of scissors out, and he was literally about to kill me. He gripped it like a knife, serial killer style, and chased me down the hall, took it to full sprint. In a desperate attempt to save my life, I burst into the teacher's room. They managed to peel him off of me before he could start actually stabbing me. I came this close. They took us to the principal's office and we ended up sitting next to each other. Though at least he didn't have the scissors anymore, so that was a lot safer. I asked him what it would take for him to stop bothering me, and he settled for a punch. Just one punch, and he wouldn't try to kill me and he wouldn't annoy me again. So I took the hit, and just like that, he followed through with his deal. I didn't have to get any stitches, and he never bothered me with ugly drawings again. But I learned not to cross that psycho until he got expelled. And I don't know, I just hope he didn't kill anyone for real. So life got different after this. This was the age of savages. And when I went into middle school, the environment became less of the jungle and more of Game of Thrones. But that's a story for another video. And as funny as it is when I talk about it now, I genuinely hated my life in going to school at the time. And this is a reality for many kids right now. I mean, lots of kids don't like going to school because of bullying, and it seems like no one cares. And that kinda sucks, cause bullying is terrible and school should be a place where students want to go so they get to learn a lot more. Kids can suck it up and survive the ordeal, but this stuff really hurts in the moment, and it can potentially leave a lot of scars, both mental and potentially physical ones. I mean, come on, I almost literally got stabbed. It's good to see that my old grade school is figuring out how to deal with it, and I'm glad to see a lot of other schools also saying no to bullying. Let's take care of our kids and take care of our schools. So this is the end of this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening to my stories. I'd also like to hear your stories about bullying, so go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And as always, I'll give you a heart for stopping by, another one for liking, and another one for subscribing. Thank you, and see you again soon.